Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our alumni webinar series conducted by Department of Civil Engineering, SCAD College of Engineering and Technology. Each of our short themed talks turn the spotlight on alumni who have turned their passions and interests into a career. Whether it's on a topic you are already interested in or you want to explore a new area, this is your chance to learn from and interact with one of our fellow SCAD alumni speaking on a subject they are passionate about. As a part of this ongoing series, presenters provide education, insight, skill development, and inspiration through hour-long virtual programming. I am pleased to introduce today's resource person, Ms.Tecy Titus, Senior Planning Engineer, Nael Bin Harmel, Abu Dhabi. She is an alumna from batch 2009 to 13 of SCAD College, Cheranmahadevi, Tirunelveli. Her current project is with UAE Defense. Her research focuses on shooting ranges and training facilities for the military. Today, she is here with us to share her views on strategic planning for large-scale projects. Ms. Tessie Titus, you are one of the SCAD legacy. You make a difference. You inspire us by who you are, what you do, and what you care about. You are changing lives and changing the world. You make us proud. We are stronger because of you, and we are delighted to welcome Ms. Tessie Titus to this technical webinar. Before I hand the session over to Ms.Tecy Titus, I have few housekeeping items to cover about this presentation and SCAD Civil Technical Webinar platform. First, today's webinar will be available on demand after this live session and is accessible through the same link you are using now. Next, we would love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have any queries, you feel free to ask to our resource person at the end of the session. And last, we would like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your social networks. You can use the social sharing icons at the top right corner of your player to post this webinar directly on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. An important reminder, participants, please stay connected till the end of the session. Feedback form link will be posted in the chat box at the end of the session. And I request all the participants to mute your audio and video. So, without any further ado, I would like to kick things off by welcoming our beloved resource person, Ms. Tessie Titus. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gauri. And good morning, everyone. I am Tessie. I don't think I need to introduce any more than this because Gauri has already spoken enough. So I hope all of you are keeping safe at home. And during this time, this is a great initiative for you all to be proactive at your subjects. And I am happy to be a part of this. Thank you, Sheila ma'am, for having me here. All right, so let's get started. Today's session, an introduction to strategic planning for large-scale projects. So as it says, the strategic planning, all right, I'll be dealing with things from my practical experience, and I'll be giving you insights on this from my practical experience. All right, so let's see a quick synopsis of the session.
It's Tessie. Welcome, Tessie. I am all here. We are all trying to see you. Just continue.
Thank you. All right, so can you all put the mics off for the time being? If you have any doubts in between, you can get connected, all right? Yes, I do. All right, okay. So this is a quick synopsis of the session. So I'll be dealing with what is construction planning, why it is required, and then how do we go about it? And at last, we'll see what if the plan doesn't work. So once you know what is construction planning and why it is required, we'll see how you create a plan, okay? And at the end, we'll also see, just in case the plan doesn't work, how do we deal with it, okay? So even before we get into the core subject, I want you all to, I want to be sure that you all know how a construction industry looks like or how a construction team looks like. Because as a student, when I was in my final year, I wasn't really sure about all of this happening in the industry. So I just want you all to be aware of this. I am sure most of you should be already knowing. So in a construction team, we generally have a client, and the client has a consultant who will be supervising the works, and then at the last end and the most key role is being played by the contractor, who's the executor. So it is generally like the client or the builder. There are normal cases where the client itself becomes the contractor. There are builders who do construction on their own, who have in-house projects. But generally, we have public sector or private sector clients who will be providing the projects to the contractor. In between, we'll always have a consultant. On normal cases, there can be cases where you don't have a consultant as well. So they'll be the ones who will be supervising the works. So as we know, the contractor is the key person here. We need to know what a contractor's execution team looks like. All right, so we will have a construction management team, the site team, and then the other important sectors. So the first one is the construction team, management team, where you have the project director, the project manager, the construction manager, and the planning engineer. All right, so this is the role I play in my team. And then you have the site team where you have the project engineers who are like all rounders who should be knowing better about all the concepts of, you know, engineering, and who have executed a lot of projects before. And site engineers with 5 to 6 years of experience probably on site. And then under them we'll have the workers. Okay, so the other important team is the cost control and the quality control team. We'll have the quantity surveyors, the QA/QC engineer. The quantity surveyor is the person who will be generally dealing with the cost and payments and stuff, the BOQ. All right, QA/QC engineers, they are the ones who will be dealing with the quality, the materials, the procurement, and all that. And last, we have the safety engineers. And apart from this, you have a design team. I'll not be dealing with that because design team is that is another scenario. We'll only be dealing with the execution part here. Okay, so the construction phase itself can be divided into 5: project initiation, project planning, project execution, project monitoring and control, and the project closure. Here I'll be dealing with project planning and project monitoring and control. So how you plan a project and then how you monitor it. All right, these are the two phases that we'll be dealing with right now. I'll try to cover whatever is possible with this limited time that we have. Okay. So what is construction planning? It's nothing but we are trying to manage a project effectively using the resources that the scope demands, okay, within the project duration. So right now there is nothing like a small project. I don't think we have any more small projects. We are all dealing with relatively bigger projects, and you know the quantum of work is a lot within limited time durations. So probably if you see 10 to 15 years back or 15 to 20 years back, construction management wasn't that prominent in the industry because probably we had luxury of time or we had relatively smaller projects. But right now we are dealing with bigger projects. You know, when you say even villa constructions, you have no less than 100 villas happening, 100 villas, 200 villas, 1,000 villas, multi-story buildings, kilometers of roadways and all. So everything is on a large scale happening right now. So, and we always have a limited time duration. All the clients want their things done in a very limited duration. So that is when we will have to deal with the project effectively, and that is when construction planning comes into role. As I said, this is the relevance of construction planning right now in the industry because we have the time limit, we have the cost limit, we have the resource limits as well. So putting all of these project components together, we'll have to deliver the project within our time frame, within the time frame that we have in the project. Okay. So now, as we know what is it and how important it is, we need to know how you create a plan in a project. So first and foremost, these are like the bullet points that we'll be discussing on how to create a project plan or a construction plan. Okay. So you definitely need to have a practical experience. If you need to create a plan without experience, you can't be dealing with it. My suggestion to any of you who are pursuing civil engineering, right after your graduation, you will have to be on site, irrelevant of you being a male or female. The first few years have to be on the site. You need to see things practically happening by yourself. You need to deal with the workers. You need to see how things come up. So that is when you really have the practical experience and you can start deciding things. You can start building a plan. All right, so practical experience is the most important one here, and then you need to coordinate. So you need proper coordination between your whole construction team, which begins with the project manager, your site team, the ones who are like meeting the end on the site, and then the cost and the estimation team. You need to bring everything together, bring everyone together in the plan, because you can't be making, as a planning engineer, you can't be creating a plan by yourself and throwing it on the tables of your project manager or your construction team saying, this is my plan, you have to deal with it. No, that's not how it works. You need proper coordination. You need to coordinate and get ideas from everyone, suggestions from everyone on how your plan is, how your project is going to happen from the starting to the end. So basically planning is nothing but you are going to have an idea about how you're going to go about this project from day one till the end of the project. Okay. And then you create an execution plan. Execution plan is nothing but once in the beginning of a project, once you have your scope ready, you have your BOQ, bill of quantities ready, you have your drawings ready, you need to collect all the information possible from all of this, and then you have to make an execution plan. All right. So the main or the most important part is creating a schedule. See, if it was a small, like a building or a villa or something small you had to create, you can create a plan on an Excel sheet or a Word file. Before the onset of a project, you can create a small one. But right now we are dealing, as I told you, we are dealing with bigger streams or large scale projects that you can't really make a plan or create. Can someone's mic is on? Can you please turn it off? Thank you. So once you have an idea about your project, you will have to create it using the tools that are available today. Right now, we are not in a position to use Excel or uh, simple tools which you can create schedules on one sheet paper or two sheet paper. It is not possible to create a plan today. So that is why we have tools to help us. We have project management tools. There are a lot of them available, but then I'll be dealing with Primavera today because Primavera is the most common one that is used, P6. You have also Microsoft Project and so on, but all of them are interrelated. If you know to work on one tool, it will be easy to deal with the others too. So P6 is what we will be dealing with. And then once your plan is ready, this plan, you're going to be creating a plan before the onset of a project. So before a project starts, you'll be creating a plan. And then what happens during the project? What is your role? What happens after the project begins? So that is when project monitoring and control comes into role. So once you have the plan ready, during the project, you need to have proper monitoring and control over the plan you created. That is when project monitoring and control comes into role. And last, so we'll be dealing with how you update the program, how you follow up, what is mitigation plans and all that. And at the end, I'll be talking about how you claim for additional time if it's necessary, using the delay analysis methods. Okay. So execution plan. So execution plan is nothing but you're creating a small methodology or a crew movement. For example, here you see this is a small layout of 410 villa project. Okay, so in here we are dividing the project, the layout into four zones: zone 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is for your ease. You have to break down your project into smaller zones which you can easily execute by parts, and then you create a crew movement with the crew you have. You will have to group your crews. Say you have you are saying you have two crews, so you put one crew on zone 1 and you put another crew on zone 3. The crew 1 will be executing zone 1 first. At the same time, you will have this group 2 working on zone 3. So simultaneously, you will have work happening on both sides. So all this is required when you have very limited time. It's not like you have the luxury of time to complete zone 1, then move to zone 2, and then go to zone 3. That doesn't work. So in order to cut short your time, you need to split your crew. You need to see the areas which you can begin at the same time so that you can simultaneously work on things. So as you see here, you have two crews. So one crew will be working on zone 2 simultaneously, other crew works on zone 3. And once zone 1 is completed, the same crew moves to zone 2. And similarly, once zone 3 is completed, this moves to zone 4. So this is how you make, this is a simple illustration of how you make a very basic plan in the beginning of a project. Okay, so now moving on to the important things. So this is about creating a project plan or a schedule. These are the important things that you need to know: work breakdown structure, proper sequencing of the activities, or grouping the activities, how you club activities, what is the importance of the work breakdown structure and all that, and what is productivity, how you measure activity durations using the productivity. And I will be also talking about activity relationships, resource allocation, how you do resource allocation, and cash flow. Okay. All right. So this entire schedule is nothing but you will be putting down together all the works from day one till the last day of the project on a proper sequence with a proper work breakdown structure, having all of this components met together on a proper note. Okay. So this is a very general form of a work breakdown structure. Once the project is commenced, you can divide it into three. One is the pre-construction phase, then the construction phase, and the post-construction phase. So generally, in a program itself, you will be dividing your project in the same way. You'll have pre-construction activities, you will have construction activities. Whatever, this is just an example. You will go about whatever your construction scope demands. This is just an example of an infrastructure project where you have all of this, and then the post-construction where you have to deal with the as-built drawings, testing, commissioning, and all that. In the pre-construction stage, we have a mobilization, the engineering, where you have to get approvals of your drawings, of your materials, and so on. And then you have the procurement phase. Procurement is interrelated. Procurement, after procurement, you once your manufacturing and shipping starts, this process will be your key factor to go about your construction. So you will be procuring your materials and delivering it to site based on the requirement at the particular time of the project. Okay, this is just an example of how a P6 WBS looks like. Okay, so as we just saw, we'll have all your works broken down into phases. The initial phase of general requirements, mobilization, and all that, and then the engineering phase, then the construction phase. Under engineering, you will generally have your method statements, shop drawings, whatever you require before beginning your project. Okay, this will be ongoing on the first few months of the project. All your approval things will be happening in the first few months of your project, and then the construction itself, we divide it into small fragments where you can have your items clubbed. It's not like you have an entire list of activities, and it is going to be a mess if you have a full list of activities without properly coordinating it or properly grouping it together. So that is why work breakdown structure is important, and that's why you first create a work breakdown structure when you create a plan. So once your work breakdown structure is ready, like this is how your chart view looks like. This is the basic view that will be seen on the the P6 program. So this is your chart view. This is, as you can see, for a program, a plan, you have all of this. So all of this is like you on a hierarchy level it works. So under each thing, under procurement and engineering, you have all of this. Under construction, you can have section 1, section 2, like how we saw how we divided it into zones. So all that. So now I want you to know that WBS is just a framework only. It is not like I can say, for example, imagine you have folders in your computer. Imagine you have a main folder called music or something. And then when you open the folder, you have subfolders. For your ease, you have split your music files into different folders. Say, English, whatever, into different languages or something as you like. So imagine these folders are empty. You have just created the folders and these folders are empty. What is the purpose of the folders? So that is the same way the work breakdown structure works. It is just a framework, but without activities, your work breakdown structure is of no point. So once you have your work breakdown structure ready, you need to insert activities into it. That is when you have to create your activities based on the work breakdown structure. You will be putting down whatever activities this particular work fragment takes. So now we'll be dealing with activities, how you frame the schedule with the required activities. This is also an example again. So as you can see, you have this. These are this is the WBS that we created. Once you create the WBS on your activity sheet, you can see your WBS like this: construction, substructure, earthwork, and all of that coming together. So this will be only visible once you have your activities under the WBS. So these are the activities, as you can see: excavation, backfilling. These so the activities are the key things that you need in a program. But just to club these activities, you have the WBS. So as you can see here, all of the activity. See, there are activity names repeating. For the footings, you have shuttering. For the stub columns, again, you have shuttering. But then you see that the activity IDs are not repeating anywhere. So once you have these activities need to have a proper coding also, because at any point of time of the project, if you need to search for an activity, you can only search based on the activity ID, because inside your project you might have the same activity name repeating over and over. So the activity IDs have to be put up together in such a way it does not repeat anywhere else. Even your P6 will reject if you have the same activity ID coming up again. Okay, so like this is the asset name. You can have your building name, you can have the work type, and then just the numbers. This is how the coding works. Okay, so now like you see here, you have the activity ID, activity name, and then the most important thing is your duration. So once you know what activities you have within the project, you need to know what amount of time each activity takes. That is when productivity comes into role. Okay, so you need to fix the duration for each activities based on the productivity. So as you might already be knowing that productivity is nothing but quantity divided by its duration. Any particular activity, the quantity of the activity divided by its duration is the productivity. But generally, most industries, most firms, we have our own productivity. For example, in my firm, like we will already be having a particular productivity sheet. We know how our productivity works. So you generally know your productivity. So once you know your productivity, it's very easy to fix your duration. So duration is nothing but quantity divided by the productivity, in other terms. Okay. So as you see an example here, imagine you have gypsum partition walls and the total quantity of your project is 90 meter square. You have a total wall work of 90 meter square to be done. And if you know your productivity is 10 meter square, so when you put in this activity into your program, you know that you have to give 9 days. If it is only one mason you have, depending upon the resource you have. Imagine you have two masons, then you can cut short the duration by four days, right? So 9 divided by 10, you know that you have to give 9 days for this particular work. If you have more resources, if you have more labor, if you have more people, then accordingly you can have a higher productivity, and accordingly you can also reduce your duration. You don't need that amount of time if you have more productivity. That depends on your productivity. And the next important component is the activity relationship. As you can see here, you have activity IDs, you have activity names, and you have the duration. These dates, these start dates and finish dates are never put in by yourself. Nobody puts up these dates over here. These dates are being auto-calculated when you define activity relationships. And that's why you need to know how you define activity relationships. So once you have an activity, you have put your ID, activity ID, you have put your activity, and you have put your duration. All these three you are going to be entering by yourself, all right? So once all of this is done, you need to know how you properly link your activities within itself so that your plan creates a proper sequence or a logical sequence. Now, if you see, for example, this is plastering for internal walls. This is an activity. So this is the relationships I have defined here for this particular activity. This activity has its predecessors and successors. Predecessor are nothing but the activity in itself cannot start without completing these activities. So these are the activities which requires to be finished before you start this particular activity. So those are the predecessors. And what are the successors? This is predecessor, the activities which are falling before this activity, and successor are nothing but the activities which are following this activity, which come after this activity is done. So here I have I have linked all the other MEP works which can start after you have your finishing done with the MDBs, lighting and all, you have fixed. So likewise, every activity will have n number of, you can define a lot of relationships for each activity depending upon your requirement. Okay, so once you have your proper activity durations done, and once you do the proper linking, your program should be giving you a proper logical sequence of activities. Now, let me tell you about different types of relationships that you have. Okay, so activity relationships in itself are of 4 types: finish, 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 start, start, finish, and start to start. So once you assign a predecessor or a successor, automatically here you have a relation type. So here you can define what kind of relation this activity has with this predecessor. So these are the 4 important or the only types of relationships you have here in P6, which is finish, 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 start, start, finish, and start to start. This, as the name itself says, depends on when the activity finishes or starts. So imagine I have linked plastering to the concrete work. This is probably the last concrete work. Okay, so I'm giving it maybe the parapet, say the parapet or something, the last concrete activity you have. So I have defined the plastering to be started after this, and I have given finish to start, which means once this finishes, this starts. So that is why it is finished to start. And I have given here a lag. So if you see, after the types of relationships that you have, you need to also know what lags are. So you have different relationship types and lags. So lags can be used anywhere depending on your requirement. Like here I have used finish to start with a lag of 14 days. So which means this activity starts after this activity is finished, but with a lag of 14 days. This concrete activity finishes, and then I need 14 days in between for the finishing to start. That is what this defined relationship means. So probably I am taking this 14 days of lag because I need curing to be done, I need deshuttering to be done. So only after all of this is done, you can start the plastering activity, right? So that's why I am putting in lag here. So likewise, you can add lags or lags as per your requirement of the activity. Now, if you see here, I have given start to start relationship also for another activity. This is a delivery activity. So I'm meaning here that once my paint starts delivering on the same day, I can start the activity, which is why start to start. So start to start means nothing but once this activity started, you can also start this activity simultaneously. And likewise, all the successor activities you can define the same way. You can have start to start relationships or finish to start relationships. Okay, now moving on to resource allocation. Once you have all of this defined, now you are moving on to the important things, which are the important components, which demands for the project, and which are the key factors for the project, which are the resources. I think we need to know how we can manage our resources between the projects. So one of the important aspects of project planning is that we are not wasting any resources when it is not at the inappropriate time. For example, we are creating a schedule so that we are sure that we have our resources being used on a during the appropriate time. You're not wasting it anywhere else. Say it could be the materials or the manpower or the equipments. So the basic resources that we have are the manpower and the equipments. So within your schedule itself, now you can define what resources this particular activity is going to be using. Okay, so this I'll be dealing with last, how you put the cost for the resource. Before that, will see how the manpower and equipment loading or the proper resource loading is done. Once you have an activity, you have an option here to add your resources. Within Primavera, you have an option to give your resources in. So say this particular activity, I am adding up carpenter for steel fixers. We will already have defined their productivity based on our firm's running. So can you please mute the mic, whoever's mic is on? Thank you. So this is how you add resources for each activity, and based on your resource allocation. So you should be already having a list of resources. For example, mine, I have already assigned my resources which I'll be using for the projects before the beginning of the project. We have the manpower dictionary and the equipments too. So you can pick any resources you need from these. So generally you'll be adding in all the resources you will be using in your project or you already have planned to use, and from these you can pick for each activity what resources you will be requiring, and you can keep adding them. All right, so that is how the resource allocation works, and we are not going in detail, but yeah, this is just a quick brief of what happens. So once you have loaded all your resources, your Primavera itself gives you a summary of your deployment schedule. It gives you a summary of how your resources are being broken down within your project duration. Like say my project is of 24 months. So starting from the first month to the 24 month, now I know how my resources are being used. So at what particular month, how many resources, what type of resources are being used, I are well defined within this. I have the total number. We can create this in the beginning of the project. Once our resource loading is done, we will have a deployment schedule ready. All right. So using this deployment schedule, we generally create a manpower histogram. Manpower histogram, as you can see the same numbers that each month, this is just a summary. So now you have the breakdown of each resources and you have the summary. So using this summary, we'll be creating a graph or a chart of your manpower deployment. This is a histogram. That is how it works. So you will see, I will also tell you how you update all of this towards the end. So this is all what you create in the beginning of the project. This is your manpower deployment schedule. This is your equipment deployment schedule. So you have a list of equipments that will be using and the total numbers, like I explained earlier, within a contract period. And then you create a histogram. So all this gives you an idea of how you're going to be using your resources that you have within your project duration. So any month, when someone asks you as a planner, somebody's going to be asking you, so on the 7th month or the 6th month, how many people are you using? How many equipments are you taking up for your project? You always have an answer with you. So all of these things you need to keep ready before the onset of a project. And the last important thing is the cost loading here for the activity itself. So once you have defined your resources, you can also load cost. This is actually the most important. When you do a tender program is nothing but when you are making a schedule for a tender, which you're not sure which you will be executing or not. You don't need to go in this detail. You don't have to go and create resources or cost or anything. But once the project is in your hand, and you know you're going to be doing this, you need to do all of this for a proper planning. So cost loading. So from your BOQ, you have your BOQ. You have from your BOQ, we will know each activity how much cost it takes. From the BOQ, we will define the cost for each activity. For example, like you have loaded the resources, here we also have an option to load the cost. So we should already have defined a resource, which is the cost, and we can keep loading the cost for each activity based on the BOQ. So if I'm saying here my 12 ballistic steel, this work takes up cost of 617,000 or so dirhams. So this means that this is taken from the BOQ. I'm using this. So this particular amount is being used within this project duration, which means from 12 Jan 2020 to 15 April 2020 is when this cost is being used. So depending upon that, you can avoid any wastage in your cost, or like the same applies for the resources. We just saw how we will be loading the resources, and so we will have an idea of how the resources are being broken down in your project duration. Accordingly, in the same way, you will assign the BOQ cost or the budgeted cost, so that you will have the budgeted cost for each activity known prior to the project starting. So finally, you have a cash flow like this. This is your cash flow. So once you have your cost loaded in your program, automatically your Primavera will generate for you on the basis of the cost you have loaded, how your project is going to be progressing throughout your project duration. So at any point of time, so say on the 18th month, if someone asks me what is your progress to be achieved, you always know this in the beginning itself. You will have an idea about how you are progressing with your work. It generally comes, you call it an S curve or a cash flow or whatever. You call it a cash flow because this is dependent on the cost in itself. So your P6 respects the cost you have loaded, and based on your cost, you know what percentage of work is done at any point of time. So this is your cash flow or your progress S curve. So at any time you can know what progress you need to have achieved. Okay. So going to two different terminologies that you must have heard when you're dealing with construction management is critical path and total float. This is actually a bit tricky. I cannot explain in one slide or in 1 hour, so I'll just put it in a nutshell. Critical path is nothing but it is the longest set of or the longest duration which is taken for a particular sequence of activities. Or by defining a critical path, you always generally use a critical path method to create your schedule. So once you have a critical path, this means that every project when you create a schedule before the beginning of the project, you need to make sure that your project has a critical path, because once you say you have a critical path, it means that you have taken the shortest duration to complete the project. It means you are trying to complete the project within the shortest time available. So that is why you have critical activities. Critical activities are nothing but activities that have total float 0. So now what is a total float? Total float is nothing but, even this requires a lot of learning, but to be to tell it in a very short note, it is nothing but each activity, as you define your relationships or whatever, after you're done with all this, your logical sequencing and all that, automatically your Primavera or your project management tool will give you a total float for that activity. Okay, so once your total float is known, may it be positive float or negative float or 0. This means if it is a positive float, it means that that particular activity can be delayed to up to that amount of time. Imagine I have an activity and this activity has a total float of 5. Uh, Float is nothing but number of days only, I'm saying. So if this particular activity has 5 days float, it means that this activity can be delayed up to 5 days. Even if you are delaying this activity for 5 days, this is not going to affect your plan. Okay. And 0 float, when it is 0 float, it means that even if you delay your this particular activity by 1 day, you will not meet your project date. So that is why you need to have a proper critical path, and this critical path should at least contain 10 to 20% of your project activities. Say my project has 3,000 activities, at least 300 activities should come on your critical path. So this is how you are going to present to your client that I have a critical path. We are trying to tell them that we are using the time in the best possible way. It means that we don't have luxury of time here. It means that we have activities within our project which, if delayed even by 1 day, can harm your project completion date. So that is what total float being 0 means. So for a created plan, or the a plan that you have created right now, it will only have a total float which is positive or 0. You will not have a negative float unless it's an updated program. I will be dealing with updated program on the coming slides. So for a plan that is created, you will not have a negative float, or you will not have a negative float. You will only have either 0 float or a positive float. But you need to make sure that you have 0 float for at least 10 to 20% of the activities. Now coming to, so now you know how to create a schedule. With all of this, we have a small idea of how you create a plan, right? Using the tool or using all of this coordination and things. You know how you create a plan, proper plan. So after your plan is ready, this happens generally during the onset of the project. You need to give your schedule, or you need to present your plan. You need to get your plan approved before or the beginning days of the project. All right. So what happens after that? What does a planning engineer do during the execution? So this is what is our role after the project starts or during the project execution. Project monitoring and control. So you have created a plan or a program and you have given it to your project team. And that is not the end of your work. You need to have a proper track on how your plan is being used during the project phase. So you need to know during execution how your plan is being being used, how your site teams dealing with your plan. So here I will be talking about under project monitoring, how you update your program, how you create your weekly updates, how you track, how you present your progress, how you generate reports using it. And then about look aheads, how you follow up once you have tracked what has been going on, how you follow up for the activities which are going to be coming up on the coming days, and then how you deal with delayed activities. This is my answer for what if the plan doesn't work. All right. So you have a plan, you have everything going on, you have your updates going on. But what happens if you have delays, and what happens if something goes out of your hand, something goes out of your plan? That is again when your role comes into place. You need to know how to deal with such situations as well. So we will be talking about how you deal with delayed activities as well in the end. All right. So now, how do you update a project schedule? Okay, so now the plan that you have created or the program that you have created in the beginning of your project is called a baseline program. So your primary schedule is nothing but your baseline program. This is the one you get approved before your project begins. Okay, so now this copy of the baseline program will be used to update. So you take a copy of the baseline program and you use it as an updated program. You need to assign your baseline program as the base for the updated program. These are things that you need to learn in depth, but yeah. In short, you just have an update. You take a copy of the plan you created and you use that for updating. So you also like assign the baseline program to the updated program to keep in track of how you have planned the work as well as how it's happening. So how do you update it? So when you coordinate with your site team, like when your work is going on, you need very close coordination with your project manager, with your site team, and all of them. You need to have internal meetings. Okay, you do have client meetings coming up when you have to present your progress on how your progress is happening each week or on a monthly basis. You need to uh, please put the mic off. Thank you. So, depending upon this, the reports or depending upon your progress, you will be generating reports. You will be presenting your progress to the client. But then you need to have, the most important thing is not presenting or reporting. The most important thing is to track how it's going on within your team. So we generally have a wrong idea that okay, the planning engineer's job is to just create the reports and then present how the progress is coming up, fabricated reports or whatever. Now it is not it. You need to have a track of everything with your team. So you need on a daily basis, you need to have internal meetings where you will be discussing how you have come about with your activities which you planned for the week. You will take updates from your site team, from your site engineers, from your project engineers, from your project manager about how the site has progressed. You will go activity by activity. You will know what progress. So in a nutshell, as a planning engineer, you will know what you need to know what is happening on the site on a daily basis. You need to go through your daily reports that are processed in the site. So once you have all of this idea, you can update the schedule. So generally it is a weekly update that is done. So every week you need to create update. You need to provide a weekly report. So for that you need to update your program on a weekly basis. So for that you will have to know when the activity was actually started, actually finished, and what is the progress percentage that you have achieved on the weekly basis. So you will have actual start, actual finish dates. You will have how you will, if the project, if the particular project activity is started and completed, you will give when it is started and when it is finished in this week. Okay. And if it is an ongoing activity, you just have to give the start date and you have to fill in what percentage of the work is completed. You have options for all this in your project management tool for sure. So once you update your program with all of this, you will automatically get your actual percentage out of this, which means you will be able to compare your planned percentage. This planned percentage, as I told you, we have already created the plan, so we know at what point what is your planned percentage. So whatever is your data date is nothing but the day you schedule the program. For example, my project started two months 2 months back, and today I am scheduling the project. So there is an option to schedule your project on the data date you want. So once you are scheduling on the particular date, the P6 will show you what amount of progress you have done based on your updates. Okay, so that is how you can compare the planned percentage and your actual percentage. So you can always have a comparison between what you have planned and what you have achieved. So last, you need to know how you, yeah, once you have updated the program, you will definitely know what are the activities that are being delayed, which you have not achieved, which you planned to achieve but you couldn't achieve. So you need to highlight all of that to your team. How do they know? You are the planner, and you need to know what are the activities that they should have achieved in the week and they have not. So you need to, probably on a daily basis or a weekly basis, you always need to highlight what are the delayed activities to your team, and you need to mitigate them as soon as possible. All right, so now how do we deal with accumulated delays, or delays that have been, you of course you highlight to your team on how your progress is happening. You know what are the delayed activities. Sometimes, it so happens that there is an unusual situation where you are not being able to overcome this delay on the upcoming weeks, like in a row. Imagine you have a delay happening, but you have raised the concern and you are expecting your construction team to curb this delay in the coming week, but it doesn't happen, it doesn't work. So it keeps happening, so the delay is being accumulated. That is when you need to know your plan is falling apart, and that is when you need to know what happens and how you deal with it when your plan doesn't work. So you need to, now that is when the mitigation plan or the recovery plan comes into role. I will be explaining it now. So this is how this is just an example of how my current updated program looks like. Okay, so this is my update, and as on date I should have achieved 85% of the, so once I have given all the actual dates, this is just the WBS structure. Like, this is just a summary. You can't see activities here because I have collapsed all the activities. So if you see here, so you get the overall schedule percentage, not just the overall. You will know for each and every work breakdown or each and every fragment what was your schedule percentage that you should have achieved, and you can compare it with what you have achieved. So here you see, this was my schedule percentage to be achieved, but this is the performance percent. The performance percentage complete is nothing but what we have achieved, the actual percentage. So which means I am delayed in the project by so much. By, if you calculate 76 minus 85, you will know what is your current delay. Or this is all initial happenings. But if you are going in track, if your project is going in track, you will always have a positive percent complete. If it is your duty to make sure that if your schedule percentage is 85, your actual is also the same, that you are going in track with the program. Okay, so here, as you can see, you have a total float, everything is negative for you. This is the slippage or the negative float. Like I told you, when you create a program, in your baseline program, you will not see any negative floats because you are creating the program and you know that you are going to be meeting it with your project duration. So in your baseline program, you have no negative floats. You only have positive floats or zero floats for the critical activities. But when you are coming to the updated program, depending upon the float, so imagine my float for a particular activity is 7 days, and I have not completed the activities on the day, but the program will not show a slippage for 7 days. It will the float will keep reducing. On the fifth day, it will show 5 days. So you are delayed, like you can delay the a particular activity only for 5 more days. So once you have crossed this 5 days and you have reached a point where your total flow to 0, and still you have not started this activity in the coming days, automatically you will have a slippage, and that particular activity will automatically take up a negative float or a slippage. So that is how your project shows the slippage. Now, if my project was supposed to be completed on 2nd July, the slippage of 37 days will shift the project completion date to this. So either you have to mitigate the program and bring it, try and complete it by this date, or you have other options. We'll be discussing about this in the coming slides. Okay, so apart from the tracking that you do, you need to, on a daily basis, apart from the tracking that you do, you need to highlight to your team also about the look ahead. You need to have a look ahead created on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. So on a weekly basis, you need to highlight to your team what they need to achieve in the coming week, what is the progress that they have planned in the coming week, that we have planned together. So all of this plan is created together, as you know. So we need to always keep reminding them. They might not necessarily know what is the next week activity that is coming up. There should be a building that you plan to start next week. Out of the 20 or 25 buildings, your project manager is not going to remember that he has to start this building. But as a planning engineer, you need to know that this is a particular building that you plan to start at this point of time. So as I said, it is important to alarm the construction team with what works they need to achieve in the coming week or the coming month. You can create a 2 weeks look ahead, a monthly look ahead, weekly look ahead, even a look ahead for the next day. All right, so generally we are navigating the workflow, we are navigating how the work happens. So actually my project manager calls me the captain of the ship, I don't know. So it is generally that you navigate the project in the way you want, which you have already planned and coordinated with your team. So at any point of time, so it has always happened that we have a progress meeting, and then I find out, I as a planner, I find out that okay, these activities are delayed for more than so many days, and it is my responsibility to alarm the team. It is my responsibility to dictate them, you change the plan for tomorrow and you better do this activity tomorrow, because this you have already delayed. So all of this is your role. This is you need to be proactive, and you need to tell them what is delayed, how to achieve the delayed ones, and so on. So don't even go to weekly basis level. You can start tracking on even a daily basis, or you can even keep giving them look aheads for the next day, for the next week, for the next 2 weeks, for the next month. So this is your duty to keep alarming them. Okay, so now you know how to update it, you know how to alarm your team, and now you need to know how you mitigate. So this is the answer for what if the plan doesn't work. Like in the synopsis I told you, we'll be dealing with what happens if the plan doesn't work out. So you have created a plan, you are updating the plan, you're going well and good with your monitoring and stuff, but there will be, in most of the programs or most of the projects I should say, you will come up with this situation once you have come a long way in the project. Once you have, if it's a 2 years project, probably midway after a year, or after 1.5 years, you will face you will come up with the problem. It's not always that everything goes according to your plan. So that is when mitigation or the recovery plan comes into role. All right, so you need to mitigation or recovery. This is recovering your plan from the delays, with, like, you already know that you have a delay, but you are trying to recover the delay within your project duration. You have an idea that, all right, this is the delay I have, but then you are sure that in the upcoming days or in the coming weeks you can mitigate it. So once, see, for small delays, 1% delay or 2% delay that you have in the weeks, that you can achieve those delays in the coming 1 or 2 weeks, probably, if you highlight to the team, if you coordinate, if you work proactively. But then once it is a 5% delay or a 10% delay or higher percentages of delay, okay, when the delay gets accumulated and it no longer looks achievable, so you know that it looks so unachievable to you, but you also know, or your project team or your site team or your project manager is confident that though it is delayed, you can have this achieved within your project duration. That is when you need to bring in your recovery plan or your recovery action or a mitigation plan. Even if you don't yourself do a mitigation plan, when you're delayed beyond 5 to 6% in your project, your client or your consultant is definitely going to ask you for a mitigation plan. Okay, so you will have to provide them how you're going to mitigate the delays that you already encountered with. So the common ways to mitigate, how do you mitigate? Now you have some delays happened, okay, because of so and so reasons, probably the materials were delivered late, or or you didn't have the proper resources at that kind of time with the expected resources. Maybe your planned number of manpower for the month of for the fifth month of the project was 120, but you had only 80 people due to some limitations. All of these project scenarios can come up. So once all of this happens, you reach a point where you have to mitigate it. And the most common ways to mitigate it would be to add additional resources. You cannot do anything without adding new resources to your project. So you will have to add additional resources, or you will have these two go hand in hand, because once you add more resources, okay, you know that now your activity durations can be skewed. Okay, so imagine according to your plan, an activity had to be achieved within a week, or say 7 to 8 days, and since now you have a major delay, and you are going to be adding more resources, your productivity will be higher there, so you can reduce your duration. So when you keep reducing the durations, automatically your negative float will start reducing, and you can have a different plan or a recovery plan for whatever activities you have already delayed, and for the upcoming activities. So also, as we saw, we have finish to start links, you have start to start links. So all of the finish to start links, for example, you have an activity which needs to be finished, and then only you can start the next activity. But if it is possible, if it can be accommodated, you need to rework on your link. Instead of giving finish to start to the next activity, you just give start to start with some lag. Okay, so it means, imagine you have a pipe laying going on one zone, and you're imagining that only once you finish this pipe laying, you start the other sector. But now, since there is a delay, and since you have added more people or more equipments to mitigate this delay, what you do is you don't really need to complete one pipeline and go to the other one. You can have start to start with the lag, or even start to start. You can have those two activities parallelly going, just if it is in a logical sequence. That you can never have start to start for activities which can be started only after finishing a certain activity. But if there are activities which can start parallelly together, you need to go about it. And also, if you can have activities which you can give start to start with certain lag, you can have that instead of the finish to start lag, because finish to start is going to consume a lot of duration. Finish to start means you're going to finish up the entire line and then start the next line, so that is going to take you 2 months. But if you say start to start, it is just going to be you start this and you start that parallel. So within a month, you're going to achieve this, right? So that is how you encounter your delays. That is how the mitigation plan works. Okay. Now, this is the last point that we'll be discussing, claims. So now we saw how you mitigate a delay, or how you encounter a delay that has already happened. But then there are times in your project that the delays go out of your hand. Out of your hand, as in, that there is a delay and this cannot be mitigated by any chance within your project time frame. So that is when you need to claim for more time, or you need to ask your client for additional time. This is also your role. Okay, so when can we claim for an extension or additional time? You can never claim for additional time without proper justification. Without having a justifiable delay, you can never go for an additional time. No client is going to give us additional time unless or until we have delays which can be justified. Say, just what are justifiable delays? Like, you have a delay which is not the responsibility of the contractor. It can be delays that happen from the other ends, like probably the client would have delayed in the approval of something. Approvals could have gone wrong, or they should have taken time to finalize some material, or they should have taken time to approve some drawing for you, or they should have changed something in the drawings. So once you have justifiable delay, and you couldn't start as you planned in the beginning of the project, so that is when, and you now know that this cannot be achieved within your project duration. What do? So that is when you for every project you have contract clause and all that. See, in addition to your BOQ, your drawings, as a planning engineer, you also know, you should also know your contract. You have contract clauses. You need to go through all your contract clause. So when you have any delays, there will be a contract clause which will be in favor of the contractor, which we can justify and use to claim for an extension of time. So one is just having justifiable delays, and the other one would be just in case of variations that you receive from the client. Imagine you have variations that you receive from the client, and like new work or something which you didn't know about, like added scope or something they need in the middle of the project. Somebody comes up with, the client comes up with some sort of work that you didn't anticipate in the beginning of the project, and you know that you cannot accommodate it within your project duration. Then you need to claim for additional time. You need to raise your hand and say, see, this cannot be done during my project duration. I need to take this after the beyond the project duration. I need more time, or that is when you need to claim for extension of time. All right. So generally, how do we claim this? You need to study about delay analysis. This is again a very uh, elaborate this thing to learn. But in short, you have three basic methods of delay analysis. One is impacted as planned, time impact analysis, and window analysis. All right. So impacted as planned is nothing but if you have any of this happening in the beginning of your project. Say you've just started your project, you're just 1 or 2 months away from your project, away from starting your project, then you can go for impacted as planned, because you here in this you will be analyzing your delay. You will do your delay analysis using your baseline program. You will do it on your latest approved baseline. So baseline is nothing but the program we were talking about, the created schedule, the base plan. So on the baseline program, you will be putting in your delay events, and you will be checking the impact of those delays on your baseline program. This happens only in the initial days of the project. You cannot have your delay analyzed on your baseline program on during, as the project progresses, and after your progress has gone a long way, you cannot go and analyze your delay on a baseline program, because now you have an updated program with all the current scenario, with all the updates of all what was going on in the project. So this is your updated program, which is more realistic than your baseline program, because baseline program was your plan. Now you have an updated program which says when you started, what activity and what was the delay. All of this delay will be shown in your updated program only after certain days. So now you will have to analyze your delay only using your updated program. This you will have to study in depth, but in short, you will just have your delay events put into your, as we saw, you have the WBS. Into the WBS, you can add your delay events, and one by one you can put in your delay events. What are the events which you are testifying for, and you need to link those. You know how to link, right? How we discussed about activity relationships. The same way, you will be linking this delay event to the activity which this event has affected. So once you give that link, it will automatically show you how many days has been impacted, and so on. And you need to give proper justification. You need to create a narrative of all the delays that has happened. You need to have a chronology of how the delay has happened and all that. So that is about time impact analysis. And last, you have the window analysis. This is breaking down your project into smaller fragments of time and doing it, but this is a very time consuming one. So generally we go for the first two. Okay. So this is about it. This is a nutshell of project planning. Okay, now some term that you must have come across while you have while you have heard of construction management or delays. It's a concurrent delay. Okay, so what is a concurrent delay? So you might deal with something called concurrent delay in future and wonder what is concurrent delay. Concurrent delay is nothing but you have one or more delays happening at the same time. Okay, so say you have some delay happening out of material. You have delivered the material late, but also there is another delay happening because the approvals came across late. So the first delay is your problem as a contractor. You failed to bring your material on time, and the second delay is not yours, because as a contractor you should have got the approval earlier, but it was delayed by the client. So once you have this delays happening in in parallel, there will be, if there is a delay, this concurrent delay is nothing but delays happening at the same time. So if there is one of these delays which is justifiable, which is on our side, which is on the contractor side, we can justify and we can claim for extension of time. So this is about it. And now we'll just see what is the current scenario here in UAE, the projects that are ongoing. As we know, this situation is really crucial. We have this pandemic happening everywhere. All of you are at home. So the construction here in UAE as such has not stopped. We have been working throughout. We had no work from home. We have not stopped any work. Construction was considered as a vital sector here. So even during the lockdown or whatever we had, construction was never stopped. So whatever ongoing projects were going on, still ongoing. So now in 2020, the most important project we had was the Expo 2020, which was supposed to happen in October 2020, but due to this pandemic, due to Corona, we have shifted it to 2021. But almost all the works are done. So for the Expo 2020, this is the largest created World Expo. Actually, we have 438 big hectare site which we have developed, all for the Expo. And in addition to that, we have also foreseen the travelers flow or the tourist flow. So they have added more hotels and constructed a lot of infrastructure projects based on the Expo in Dubai South and the Dubai land. Okay, and here, as you know, UAE has one of the best infrastructure in the world. We have the best roadways, best metros here. So as far as the infrastructure is concerned, we have the metro extensions happening this year. A lot of metro extension projects happening, and there is a lot of emphasis on this energy and utilities construction, because we have a lot of petrochemical industries coming up. As such, we have ADNOC, which is the main dealer for the petrochemical thing. So ADNOC has a lot of projects happening right now. And UAE is considered to be a fully, not UAE as such, I can say Dubai is considered to be meeting all the smart city requirements by 2030. So they are planning to have 2,000 to 5,000 Wi-Fi hotspots. And so they are interlinking infrastructure with ICT, with technology to make it a smart city, linking all the this thing through apps and all that. So this is the current scenario of what is happening in UAE. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can shoot now. Thank you so much. Hello. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, this is the last slides that we were discussing about. So once you have a scenario like this, right now in my project that I'm dealing with, because of Corona, we have actually a very big delay happening due to the procurement, which is delayed. So we have a lot of ICT products which are being delivered from Italy and European countries. So from those places, now we are not expecting the delivery. So our project was supposed to finish in July. So we can apply for an extension of time. So if your inputs are valid, if you show evidences that you have taken your approvals earlier, if you have ordered your materials earlier, and only because of this reason your delivery has been affected, then you need to, like I said, you need to claim for extension of time. You need to go through all that process. You need to send justification. You need to attach your time impact and all that, and you need to submit, and you need to get an approval. Any other questions? Okay. Sorry? what that means, but float, is he talking about total float? So, okay, floats actually, when you have negative floats happening, you need to, like I said, when you have a slippage, that is when you have a negative float coming up. Or if he's talking about during the creation of a plan, how we smoothen the float, we need to just have around 10 to 15% of activities falling on a critical path, which means only some of your activities will be having a float 0. The other activities will have a free float. So it means those activities will not be affected as such during your will not be only your critical activities will be prone to all these delays. So I think those activities we need to give more focus on. And while creating the program, you need to be sure of your critical path. You need to discuss with your team on your critical path specifically, because these are the activities from day one which are going to be affected. So you need to have a clear critical path to know that your float is smooth. Anything else? Okay. Critical path with place. I didn't get the question actually. Can you repeat it? With place. Critical path is produced, you make a critical path when you create a program itself. When you're creating a program, you are definitely, see, now we are all dealing with relatively bigger projects. So you are sure that you are not given enough time to complete the projects. It's never like you will be given a project with a very big luxury of time. It is never that you have a project and then they give you 5 years for a project which can be completed in 1 or 2 years. If all the clients, if it is a project which can be completed in 2 years, they definitely want to give you 1.5 years. They are always going to skew the duration and give it to you. So once you have skew duration, automatically when you link your activities in a proper logical sequence, your critical path will be generated during your baseline creation itself. So like I told you, you need to make sure that you don't put in a lot of activities in your critical path. You need to make sure that only around 10 to 15 or even maximum 20% of your activities falls in your critical path. Effective strategy for WBS. So like I showed in the slides, we generally have a form of WBS. So I think dependent on each firm, probably most firms have have similar work breakdown structure. Like I told you, we are always trying to divide the construction into the pre-construction, construction, and the post-construction part. And construction, always you will be breaking down, if it is a bigger project with the, if it is whenever you have the layout in your hand, you can divide it into the zones or phases you want. And in the work breakdown structure, you can make it in such, you need to make your work breakdown structure in such a way that you have proper crew movement there. You when you produce the program, it is easier to have a keep track of the project. Like when you say that zone 1 and zone 2 is starting parallelly, when you have a proper WBS, you will suddenly be able to see that, okay, these 2 zones are starting together and the next 2 zones are coming up later. So you need to make it in such a way that it is easier for anyone to understand your program. WBS is, see, as planning engineers, we can just put in activities and then create links, but that is not how it works. Anybody who is in your project team, anyone who's reading your a program should be able to understand something out of it. So that is when you create a WBS or a work breakdown structure. Like I told you, this is your general form. You have the pre-construction, construction, and the post-construction activities. And this in every construction, it is almost general. So depending upon your project, you need to divide your works. Like if it is a building work, that substructure, first comes substructure, then the superstructure, then the finishing activities, then the MEP and all that. So this is this is like the normal structure we have. This is the understanding of what we have as civil engineers, what we know, how the work is coming about. So generally, work breakdown structure should be on the base hierarchy of your activities, on the basis of how your activities will be taking place. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of Department of Civil Engineering, SCAD College of Engineering and Technology, I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the honorable delegates who blessed us with their presence and took out valuable time. I must mention a deep sense of appreciation for our alumnus, Ms.Tecy Titus, Senior Planning Engineer in Nael Bin Harmel, Abu Dhabi, for his exemplary delivery. Also, I would like to extend a special thanks to Mrs. Sheila Daniel for inspiring us and her moral support for organizing this third alumni webinar. I also wish to express my gratitude to our principal, Dr. Ebidane, for providing encouragement and support. I also wish to express my gratitude to all of my colleagues, non-teaching faculties, and volunteers for his technical support in conducting this webinar. Finally, I thank our beloved Chairman, Vice Chairman, MD, GMD, AGM for their fullest support and encouragement. Participants, the feedback form for the session is shared in the Google Meet chat section. Kindly fill the feedback form within the 15 minutes for receiving certificates. Thank you all for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you.